All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a geopolitical mystery. We're looking at an analysis that presents a pretty radical history of the Horn of Africa. And believe me, it's going to challenge what you think you know about the region's borders. So, let's start with the central puzzle, the one that really shapes the entire region. How on earth did Ethiopia, with over 120 million people, become the biggest landlocked nation in the world? You might look at a map and think, just a quirk of history. But the source we're exploring today argues it was no accident at all.
And here it is, the core thesis from our source material. Ethiopia's landlocked status is the result of a deliberate 500-year strategy of encirclement, a project of containment that was passed almost like a baton from one global power to the next.
So let's rewind the clock. Our investigation starts way back in the 16th century. The analysis we're following argues that when the Ottoman Empire showed up, they didn't just conquer the coast. No, they created a blueprint for containing the Ethiopian highlands, a blueprint that would be used for the next 5 centuries.
And it didn't take long for this to become official policy. By 1555, the Ottomans created a new province called Habesh, and its purpose was crystal clear: cut Ethiopia off from the world. We're talking economically, politically, you name it. This was a dedicated strategy of coastal denial.
And this wasn't just a simple military move. No, this strategy was incredibly multi-layered. Militarily, they garrisoned the ports, which basically created a technology embargo. It stopped firearms from getting to the highlands. Administratively, creating this new province, Habesh Eyalet, set a legal precedent for separating the coast from the interior. And ideologically, they reframed the entire Red Sea as a Muslim lake, which effectively pushed Ethiopia out of the whole maritime community.
Okay, fast forward a bit, Ottoman power starts to fade, and who steps in? Yep, the European powers. But our source argues they didn't invent a new playbook, they just took the old one and gave it an upgrade with some very sophisticated legal and commercial tools.
And the first move, well, it wasn't some big, flashy invasion. It started with something that looked, for all the world, like a simple business deal back in 1869. But this transaction was hiding a much, much bigger geopolitical prize.
So on the surface, you've got this Italian shipping company just buying the port of Assab. Simple, right? Well, according to this analysis, this was a brilliant piece of strategic deception. The company was basically a front, a way for the Italian state to get a foothold on the ground without causing a huge diplomatic firestorm. They were, in effect, laundering sovereignty away from Ethiopia.
But the real turning point, what this analysis calls a critical moment of betrayal, happens in 1884. It's all about something called the Hewitt Treaty. See, Britain desperately needed Ethiopia's help to rescue its garrisons in Sudan, and to get it, they made a massive promise.
Just look at how quickly this all unfolds. It's breathtaking. In 1884, the promise is made. Help us, and the port of Massawa is yours. Ethiopia completely holds up its end of the bargain. But by 1885, Britain quietly gives Italy the green light to occupy that exact same port. And just like that, the Italian wedge of Eritrea was born, not from some organic local identity, but as a strategic wall hammered right between Ethiopia and the sea.
So while Italy is hammering in that wedge up on the northern coast, France makes a move to secure the southern outlet. They're creating what our source calls the French lock. This two-pronged attack would put the Ethiopian Empire in a state of total dependency.
The Franco-Ethiopian Railway basically became Ethiopia's umbilical cord to the rest of the world. The problem? France held the other end. By controlling everything, freight rates, the flow of goods, France could essentially turn the tap on and off for Ethiopia's entire economy. A promise of connection became an incredible tool of control.
So you gotta be asking why, right? Why did all these massive empires, one after another, work so hard to box in Ethiopia? The analysis we're looking at points to one single, overwhelming strategic resource: the waters of the Nile.
British policy in the region was really driven by a doctrine of hydraulic containment, and the man behind it was Britain's super powerful consul general in Egypt, a guy named Lord Cromer. The logic was simple, really. If you want to control the Nile, you have to control the power of the nation where it comes from. Keep Ethiopia stable, but weak.
And this one number, this single statistic, explains absolutely everything. 86%. With 86% of the Nile's flow starting in its highlands, a strong, modern Ethiopia with its own coastline was seen as a direct threat to British-controlled Egypt, and by extension, to the Suez Canal, the absolute jugular vein of the British Empire.
You see how this creates a perfect self-reinforcing trap? It's brilliant, in a way.
First, you physically landlock them, which starves their economy. Then, you hit them with a legal treaty in 1902 that prevents them from developing their water resources even if they could. The physical trap reinforces the legal trap, and vice versa.
Okay, let's jump forward to the 20th century. All this historical architecture is in place, and the trap is about to snap shut. The faces have changed, but the end goal, that stayed exactly the same.
Now, during the Cold War, the reasons for containing Ethiopia actually got even more complex. Arab nationalist leaders like Gamal Abdel Nasser dusted off that old Ottoman concept of the Red Sea as an ideologically closed sea, an Arab lake. They started funding Eritrean separatist movements with a very clear goal: chop off the coast from the non-Arab Ethiopian interior and complete the encirclement for good.
And according to our source, the final act, the moment the trap closes for good, is the 1991 London Conference. In the chaos of a collapsing regime, a decision was made to grant Eritrea independence without securing a sovereign corridor to the sea for Ethiopia. They relied on a brotherly understanding for port access, which turned out to be a fatal mistake. When war broke out in 1998, bam! The gate slammed shut. The 500-year trap was finally sprung.
So where does that leave us today? What's the real-world cost and consequence of this multi-century strategy? Well, according to this analysis, the effects are profound, and they're still playing out right now.
The strategic implications are just stark. For trade, you've created a single point of failure. For security, it means zero naval power, no ability to protect your own supply lines. And critically, when you get to the negotiating table over the Nile, it just weakens Ethiopia's economic leverage against countries like Egypt.
And this just visualizes the whole thing perfectly. Remember that French lock we talked about? Well, here it is, an overwhelming 95% dependency on the single port of Djibouti. That umbilical cord of control has now become Ethiopia's only real lifeline to the world. And that really brings us to the final crucial question. If this analysis is correct, that the region's borders were drawn not to define nations, but to contain one, well, that forces you to reconsider everything: the root causes of the conflicts, the alliances, and the tensions we see in the Horn of Africa today, and what they might all mean for tomorrow.